Hello, everyone. Welcome to Using Visual Supports to Facilitate Social-Emotional Learning for Autistic Individuals. My name is Enid Hurtado-Stremming, and I will be your presenter. And I am currently a school field training coordinator with the Kentucky Autism Training Center, which is sponsoring this presentation. Today, we will be discussing social-emotional learning, but before we do that, we're going to just go over some information about autism just to make sure that we're all on the same page and to help you understand why it's so important when you're working with individuals with autism. Also notice that I will be interchangeably using the two ways of describing individuals with autism, by identity first, which is autistic individuals, and person first language, which is individuals with autism. I tend to interchange those two to respect all different members of the autism community. After we talk a little bit about what autism is today in the year 2023, we will then talk about our topic for today. What is social emotional learning? Just to make sure, again, that we're all on the same page and understanding what exactly this term refers to. Then we'll talk about visual supports and why it's important to use visual supports. And then we'll start to narrow down to talking about SEL, social emotional learning specifics, visual supports, and then how to implement these visual supports with the people that you're working with and for yourself, because the visual supports is a type of support that integrates the use of it with not only the client, person, or child, but also with the person themselves who's teaching it, because it does require modeling and prompting. So we'll talk more about that when we get to that part. So here we go. Oh, that's right. One thing that I need to make sure you know about, because this is an online presentation and I'm not handing out information in person, you will find all the information for this presentation within this resource folder. So go ahead and you can pause right now and write down that bit.ly link right there, and that will take you to a resource folder. And within this resource folder, you will have a PDF of this presentation that I'm providing to you today. And inside that PDF are live links. So any videos I show, anything that I refer to, will have links to it. I will also point that out during the presentation. And then at the end, there is a resource page at the end of the PDF, of a resource page as well, so that you can go to websites and explore some of the resources that I refer to. In addition, there'll be other information in there that I will talk about. And again, I will point that out when we get to those different sections. But if you're a person like me who likes to multitask, feel free to access that right now, so that as you're listening and watching, you can start looking at this maybe on your phone or your iPad or a tablet or another digital resource that you have. Okay. All right, so how is this topic tied to autism? All right, within your resource folder that I just mentioned to you, you do have a handout that explains the medical definition or diagnosis of autism for you to look at. So if these slides are too busy for you, they're a little busy for me, but they definitely help me focus when I'm giving the presentation, and hopefully they help you as well. But if they don't, then there is a handout in there that you can refer to that will also have the same information on the next few slides. This information is the official diagnosis from the DSM-5, which is the one that was published in 2013. The DSM-7 was published this year, but it hasn't really gone out into the main public, in the sense that the information from it is as available as a DSM-5. And the sources that I have seen that talk about the seven. So there isn't a whole lot of difference in the diagnosis for autism. There may be some words with and or, as far as the number of characteristics that are involved in medically diagnosing autism. And that's something that if you are in the process of having your child diagnosed, about to do the assessments, that's something you may want to talk about or make sure you understand when you're at the diagnostic clinic. But otherwise, for this presentation today, this will meet our needs, and so we will use this as our reference for the medical diagnosis of autism. Okay, so we know that remember that the medical diagnosis is a deficit model, because the whole purpose of the medical diagnosis is to qualify individuals for resources, for therapies, for resources or services that will help them learn the skills they need to be more successful within different environments and settings in their life, being school or preschool or daycare or home, the community, all the different settings. So this is why this is the medical diagnostic criteria. All right, so that there are some challenges in social communication and social interaction, right? Being emotional reciprocity, right? Being able to exchange and understand feelings and theory of mind, the back and forth conversation, being able to ask others about their interests, emotions, and know what to do when somebody else shares with them their emotions or their experiences, and being able to have that fluid back and forth between people. It also involves nonverbal communication behaviors that are needed for relationships, and being able to communicate their needs, wants, and opinions, and advocacy, right? That we just take for granted. Whether somebody looks upset, whether somebody looks excited, whether somebody's not feeling well, or somebody wants to leave, or somebody's really wants to spend more time with the person. So all of those type of skills, and deficits developing, maintaining, understanding relationships, right? So if you don't have the skills above, that's also going to be hard. But then there's also understanding how to behave in different social contexts, and sharing in imaginative play, and what that means to listen to somebody else's interests, and how to do that. And again, that goes back to that back and forth. Autism has different levels of severity. So we no longer say they're low or high. We say it's level 1, level 2, level 3. Okay. So I'm sure many of you know that, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody's on the same page again. So level 1 requires support, but not as intensive as maybe a level 3, okay, which you could see is substantial support. And level 2 maybe, of course, is going to be right in the middle, where it's maybe some more than others in different domains. Okay. So in addition to knowing what the deficit medical model is, and so what the challenges may be for an individual with autism, it's also important to know some of the learning styles that individuals with autism may have difficulty with, or may use differently, or develop differently than, say, your neurotypical child. And that would be, and this is coming from Teach, which is out of UNC Chapel Hill. For those of you who are familiar with it, they are a big hub for evidence-based research, and just ongoing research and into learning how autistic individuals learn best, what environments will help them succeed better, and all the different facets. So They have identified 6 different learning styles, as you can see, and the 2 that you will be hearing about today will be implicit learning and multiple perspectives, because those are the ones that are going to have the most, that are most affected by social emotional learning. So implicit learning has to do with obviously the opposite of explicit learning. So implicit learning is what neurotypical individuals go through when they're very, very young. I mean, actually, it's going on, all the time with us, but really the foundation that is developed between from the time the child is born to when they get to preschool, they're learning a lot from the environment, right? It may be explicit, meaning that a parent, a sibling, extended family, daycare, they may teach a child how to do something through repetitive lessons. But for the most part, most children learn social emotional skills through implicit learning, meaning that they are reinforced by a mother's smile or just an adult smile, another child's smile when they look at them, and so that really increases their eye contact, um, or as we may call it in the educational one-to-one correspondence, right? Of looking at something and being able to really focus in on it. When somebody gives them a lot of attention for focusing in on a task and achieving a task. Well, individuals with autism may have some level of that. There is definitely some implicit learning, but it's definitely not at the level, or they don't, and if it is, they're not learning the same skills that maybe neurotypical individuals do. And their brain is wired to learn different skills at this time, and so it's not usually focused on being on those relationship skills that we just described, that it ends up being a challenge for them, right? And so um uh, explicitly teaching students with autism about these skills is really the best way for them to learn. And so a lot of the skills that when they get to school and when there's a relationship between home and school, and even at home, right? The skills that they learn are usually are taught explicitly. Now, what does that mean? That means that you're focusing in on a skill, and you are targeting on, and really focusing on how you're going to teach it, what part of the skill they already have and what they need to learn, and then teaching them that skill and evaluating to see how much they progress in learning that skill, and then being able to adapt the teaching to the way that they learn. So that's, in a nutshell, that's explicit learning. All right. Also, the challenge that they have in implicit learning is that they have also some challenges with generalization. Now, again, remember, nothing is just a brushstroke, right? It's not the same for everyone, but there will be some challenges with generalization of skills. So even though they may show some, social emotional skills, say at home, which is usually the first area, and parents or guardians say, okay, yeah, they have these skills at home, but then when they go to daycare or preschool, or they've been part of a community for a long time, and when they change communities, usually later on when they start going to work, or do some type of that type, like it could be volunteering or internship, they may not be able to perform those skills at the same level, because generalization of those skills to a new setting with new people who say different things, it looks different, maybe a little bit challenging than it is for other people. So this is where assessing that and looking and just recognizing and saying, okay, I do, the child does know how to do that skill, or the individual knows how to do that skill in this setting, but so how can we best help them explicitly teach them how to do this in a new setting? Okay. And then specific memory is stronger than integration of ideas, and I want to show you a picture because I think this best represents this rather than me talking and trying to explain it to you. So in this picture, whenever I'm with a live group, people usually respond to the question at the top by saying, oh, it's chaotic, or it's I see a lot of bunny rabbits. They look like they're having fun. And for a child with autism, what they may see is if they went kayaking at the lake or canoeing at the lake, kayaks, I know different skill, but it's still boats in the water. They may just look at literally the buddies that are on the boats on the water and say, "Oh, I see that the rabbits are having fun in boats on the water." And you're like, "Great, yeah, you're right. There are boats, there are bunnies, but what else do you see?" And they will stay focused in on that part of this picture because that is what is the most meaningful to them and that they can relate to personally. Okay, so that is part of the implicit learning, or is that it's great, it's awesome that one of their strengths is that they have that ability to focus in like that and be able to look at the details and be able to relate and really have that deeper meaning. But one of the challenges may be is that it's harder for them to see that big picture. And so that sometimes, well, that affects them as well with the social emotional learning, right? Because we do need to see that big picture, especially when we're trying to relate to other people and other people's experiences and all that stuff that I mentioned at the beginning. So, this would be also explicitly taught just by, right, again, just looking at their strengths, what do they see, and then helping them learn to how focus and learn how to see the big picture of situations. Now, the other skill that I mentioned was multiple perspectives, which I think that this is the one that people usually know about more. And this one represents challenges with joint attention, right? Understanding that other people do not know what they know, that they have different beliefs, views, values, and experiences. Understanding and responding to others' beliefs, desires, intention, and multitasking. Being able to look at something and listen, which is when we hear the I, right? Like when it's hard for some people on the spectrum to look at somebody and listen to them while they're saying what they're saying, right? They're looking at, busy by looking at their face and their expressions and the details, and the auditory processing is not as strong. So some individuals, now again, everyone's different, may have to look down or and listen so they can be able to focus and listen. And that's something that in our culture we're taught to look and listen, right? But sometimes that's challenging for some individuals, and so that falls under multiple perspectives, because they may not realize that other people are not, are able to do that, or that other people expect them to do that, and so they get very frustrated not understanding that. So again, you can see how all of this may play into relationships. Okay, so to explain what I was talking about right now, multiple perspectives, this is one test that is given in some assessments for the diagnosis of autism. Take a second and read the comic, okay? And then the last question, right? The last part says, "Where will Sally look for her ball?" Now, if I was able to hear all of you, you would say, okay, well, Sally left and then came back, so she still thinks it's in the basket where she left it, right? Well, a individual with autism may say the box, okay, because they think that Sally knows everything they know. And since they're reading the comic, they know that the ball is actually in the box because of Anne putting it in there. So you can see how that may affect what autistic individuals may think what other people are thinking. So explicitly teaching skills around that, if you do observe that some of the individuals that you're working with may have that deficit, then teaching them the multiple perspectives will also help them with SEL. Now, what is SEL though? I keep saying it, I'm referring to it all, well, you will see, we're going to watch a little video, 4-minute video, and you will see that it is made up, social emotional learning is made up of self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So now that we've talked about autism, you can see where this may be very beneficial to someone who has a deficit in these skills. Now, there is an organization that has looked into this, into the research and developed a model around it. And it's called CASEL, and we are going to listen to a video from that organization. And I, put the link to this website so that you can look more into it if you would like.
Think about the young people in your lives and all the different places where they're learning about themselves, how to relate to others, and work together on goals. How can we intentionally create learning experiences that will help all young people develop and maintain positive relationships, become lifelong learners, and contribute to a more caring, just world? Educators, researchers, community members, families, and the students themselves agree what we need is social and emotional learning, or SEL. SEL is the process through which young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that help us to understand ourselves, connect with others, achieve our goals, and support our communities. We all need opportunities to learn and engage in environments where we feel safe, valued, and a sense of belonging. So how does SEL help schools, families, and communities work together so that all young people have these kinds of learning experiences and achieve success in education, careers, and life? CASEL's framework identifies 5 areas of competence that together help us develop a healthy sense of who we are, manage stress, understand the views of others, and work together to create schools and communities where everyone can grow their strengths and interests. Self-awareness is about how we think about ourselves and who we are. It includes understanding our culture, our thoughts, feelings, and what we believe we're capable of, and understanding how these things can influence our behaviors and beliefs. Self-management is the ability to manage those emotions, thoughts, and actions in different situations so that we can achieve individual and collective goals. This includes coping with stress and anxiety, persevering through challenges, and taking action to create positive change. Social awareness is how we understand others, how we learn to take different perspectives and empathize even with people who are different from us. It also includes understanding how the broader norms and systems around us influence how we develop and create a sense of belonging. Relationship skills are how we connect and engage effectively with others, and how we form lasting friendships and connections. This includes communicating clearly, solving problems together, managing conflict and disagreements, and standing up for ourselves and the rights of others. Lastly, responsible decision-making is how we put it all together to make caring and constructive choices. This includes thinking critically about consequences, analyzing the impact of our actions on ourselves and others, and identifying solutions that support our collective well-being. We continue to develop and practice SEL throughout our lives and can adapt and apply these competencies across different contexts and cultures. How we develop SEL is impacted by our environments, which is why we need to work together across classrooms, schools, families, and communities. In the classroom, students can be explicitly taught SEL skills and also can practice and apply SEL during core subjects, like discussing different perspectives in social studies and language arts, or collaboratively problem solving in science or math. SEL is most effective when supported by evidence-based programs and trusting relationships where students are treated as partners in their learning. Beyond the classroom, SEL can be intentionally promoted throughout the school experience, from the way they're greeted in the morning to how discipline practices are carried out and how adults themselves develop and model positive relationships and the SEL competencies. Outside of school, families and caregivers provide the earliest and ongoing learning and interactions for their children So it's important that schools listen to and authentically partner with families to help shape SEL priorities and strategies for supporting their children. Similarly, when schools partner with community organizations to align their efforts, SEL opportunities can be strengthened and students benefit even more. With SEL, we can help create schools and learning spaces where all young people feel connected, inspired, engaged, and ready to contribute to the world around them.
Okay, so I think that gives you a good overview of what SEL is, and hopefully the information on autism and SEL will help you understand why it's so important to integrate into the life of the autistic individual. So let's look a little bit at this. So we know it's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Well, at Kentucky Autism Training Center, we also use evidence-based research to drive our work with the autism community. And the research that we use is from a report from NCAEP, which is out of UNC Chapel Hill, again, where the Cheech program comes from that I mentioned earlier. And as of 2020, they have 28 different evidence-based practices that have been shown to be the most effective with individuals with autism. Okay, so we are focusing on visual supports in this presentation, but I did mention to you a little bit earlier that we will also be talking about prompting, reinforcement, and modeling. As you look at this list, though, you can see that there's probably going to be a lot more. In fact, you could integrate direct instruction as a form of explicit teaching. Sometimes those two go, they're actually synonymous with one another in some instruction manuals. And there's a lot more in here too, for those of you who are familiar. If you are not familiar with certain practices on this list, or you'd like to learn more, inside your resource folder, I did include the report. It's very user-friendly. And I also included some resources at the end of this PDF for you to learn more if you would like to. All right, so at this point, what characteristics of autism would make learning SEL skills challenging? Now, remember, there is that resource handout in your, that handout in your resource folder, if you'd like to look at it again, just to kind of remind you, because I know we've covered a lot of information. And so hopefully at this point, as you're looking at it, or maybe just from your own knowledge about it, you know that the characteristics that would make learning challenging, SEL skills challenging, may be, on their own, is what this question is meant to refer to. Learning SEL skills on their own would be the fact that they do have those deficits, right, in those areas, and that they don't have the foundation all the time, unless they received some type of skilled teaching, explicit skill teaching practices or strategies when they're very young, some interventions, the early child interventions. And otherwise, they don't usually have the foundation to be able to learn this on their own. So they do need to have some explicit instruction. And as you saw from the video, the SEL model does provide that. And then also multiple perspectives, you can see, is one of those areas. And as well as that is also another area of challenge for autistic individuals. And I think I just answered this question for you. What evidence-based practices do you think would support autistic student learning with these skills? That would be visual supports, modeling, prompting, reinforcement, possibly direct instruction if you're using that as your explicit teaching. And then, of course, I'm sure there's others as well, but those are the main ones. All right. So now let's talk about visual supports, okay? Because that is the focus, the evidence-based practice that we're focusing the most on in this presentation. Now, visual supports can be seen as the type of support you provide to bridge communication and understanding when there are some troubles on one side of the bridge, meaning all behavior is communication, okay? So this is under the premise that all behavior is communication. And so, if an individual is expressing themselves in a way that is not socially appropriate and actually can be harmful to others, whether that is physically or verbally, right? Or it could be shut down, or where they're ignoring or avoiding. So that's a form of communication as well, if you're trying to avoid certain situations. Then it could be because of a lack of understanding, right? A lack of understanding of how to express themselves, or they don't understand what's going on at the time, which you can see if they have some challenges with generalization and multiple perspectives, that can occur. Also, that multitasking is also a challenge, right? So being able to look and listen at the same time. And also, we know that concrete information is processed better, is understood better than more abstract information. And then I think that's for most people, but really with the autistic individual, partially because a lot of words coming at them while they're trying to basically field out what they're supposed to be paying attention to in the environment. Sometimes they lose the meaning. So if you have a um, concrete form of the messages you're trying to share with them, then there will be better understanding for the individual. And this could be for individuals in general. I mean, if you think about it, we live in a pretty visual society. Okay. All of us use all of these things. I'm not going to say every day, but I would say most days. In live presentations, I usually ask about the calendar, and most people agree that they would be lost without their visual calendar, right? That you can have, there's a lot more tools other than these blocked out blue areas. You can color code and, go crazy on them. And we love our emojis, right? All visual supports. Look at our phones, whether you have an iPhone or the other type of phone, because I have an iPhone. They use icons, right? Those are visuals, they're visual representations, right? And we have to know what those mean. So, who doesn't love looking at the final product of a recipe? That's usually what buys us in to create try to create something very complicated that maybe doesn't turn out like that picture, but that's okay, because that's what it gives us something to look at. And especially if we're doubting, like, okay, is that really what we're supposed to put in there? And then of course all the streets signs, bathroom signs, think of an airport. Most of it is visual because they can't always rely that everyone's going to be speaking or understanding the same language. So a lot of environments that um, are visited by people who speak different languages usually use a lot of visuals, right? Because concrete, the meaning is usually universal meaning. And it communicates that message very, very quickly, and that person can look and see that consistency or look for that sign. So lots of good reasons to be able to use visuals. And this is one visual about visuals that I love. It pretty much summarizes all on one page all the benefits of using visual supports. And I think that, it's easiest for us to understand that because, like I said, we live in a very visual world, and this is probably why, because of all these different things. Okay, so now that we established why visuals are so important, I'm going to break them down a little bit more into examples or into ways to think about visual supports. Okay. Because I think we think visual supports and we think, something similar to what I just showed you, right? The signs on the walls, the poster you just saw about visual supports, but they can also be other types of things like visual boundaries. And this is what usually happens, is that they're broken down into three categories by a firm, which is part of the evidence-based report, the NCAP evidence-based report that I showed you earlier, and the TEACH program. Okay, so you see how this is all linking together. So it's broken down into three categories, and I put that information in your resource binder. In fact, they include a little pre-assessment for you to take in case you're trying to figure out what type of visual support you should provide first, because there may be different reasons why you provide one type of visual support over another. So I'll let you figure that out on your own when you look at it in the resource folder. But let's just create that foundational knowledge about visual support. So there's three categories, and the first category is visual boundaries. As you probably have already been looking at this website, I'm sorry, this slide, and it can be done by objects, just like you see right here, furniture, like the table you see, tape on the floor. You can kind of see that in the back over there, and rugs. Okay. Those are just some. I mean, it's basically the makeup of the room that you're in, or where you're going to center a certain type of activity. This is important to know for, again, social emotional learning. If there's some parts of the room that will be provided for students to meet their social emotional needs, or again, to have other types of tools for them to be able to learn and remind themselves about what they should do at certain times, or how to communicate, whatever the lesson is. There could be a part of the room where it allows them to do that, like you see in these pictures. Cozy Cove is something that I think a lot of elementary classrooms do, but I've heard about parents having this inside their own rooms. You could see that they made this with a huge cardboard box, but I think that you can actually buy these too. So just some ideas. There's lots of ideas around these. Visual schedules is also a type of visual support, right? We think of schedules when we think about what's going on during the day. Definitely that's the primary way that a lot of people are introduced to a schedule. Like I just showed you earlier, we all have visual schedules these days. Whether you have them on your computer or carry the book around, right? I know a lot of people who like the book and like to have to turn the pages and stuff, but that's still a type of visual schedule. But the type of visual schedules that we're talking about when it comes to SEL learning may be the steps. So it may be more of a procedural checklist. That's a type of visual schedule. And it's basically describing what are the steps that you should do in order to successfully complete an activity. So sometimes people see like the cozy corner, or they think of, oh, well, if I tell my student or my child to go take a break, they're going to go over there and they're just going to fool around, get on their their device, and that's not exactly helping them with their social emotional learning and regulation. So then what you need to do then is provide them with a breakdown, a procedural checklist, right, of what they're supposed to do when they first get there. Because most of the time, it's learning, it's new to them, it may be new to you too, so it's a lot of times this is helpful to the person teaching as well. That's why I told you visual supports benefits everybody involved. It's definitely an interactive type of support for the learner and the teacher. And so here are some examples: calming down, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, or somebody created some calm down corner rules. Okay, so whatever it looks like, this is the type of things that you can provide for the individual and for yourself to remember what to do, what the expectations are to be successful. And we're going to look at some other things too that, it may be multiple different types of visual supports that you teach the child to do, depending on how they're feeling, right? If they're feeling really tired or very sad, or they're feeling anxious or overwhelmed. So you could provide different supports depending on, but again, we're going to talk about what curriculums, evidence-based curriculums, like you saw in the video, that they recommend using evidence-based research curriculum. So we'll talk about that in a second. Visual cues. Now that this kind of just kind of, I feel like visual cues is the biggest category out of the visual supports, and it's the third one, right? That just includes everything else, right? Charts, timers, the clock, well, it's almost the same thing. Trays, post-it notes, graphic organizers, labels and signs, choice boards. Choice boards is something you may use, visual instructions. So you can see where it does start to overlap, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So you started to see some of those visual supports. So we're just going to continue looking at different examples that apply to the different SEL categories that we learned about in that video. But before we start, for those of you who do work in schools or in clinics, you're getting started using SEL programs, this may be, here are some that I know of, that I've come across when working with different groups that may be happening right now. So conscious discipline, second step, steps, might be second steps. Zone, and I think both of these have curriculums that are designed for different age groups as well. I would look on their websites. Zones of regulation, I know that can apply. That's also for different groups, but I think the website kind of, you could kind of overlap that. If you haven't heard of these, if you don't know where to start, at the very bottom of this slide, you see that it says CASTLE. So, right, the organization that has that model and kind of is the foundation for a lot of these evidence-based programs. They have a program guide of different curriculums that they recommend, different programs that they recommend. So if you're starting to look and you want to learn more about, I just put the link to the program guide right there. So look on the PDF of your PowerPoint and then go to this slide and just click on program guide. I'm not going to launch it because, as you saw before, it makes me go through different windows to get back. So I'm going to keep going for time purposes. Okay, what I have found though, when looking at all these different programs is that they're made for large groups, right? They're made for schools, classrooms, a large, for groups of people. But sometimes, as with most of the stuff for our autistic individuals, we need to have a more individualized visual support for them, for the parts that they're not understanding, right? That are not, and this doesn't have to be with just kids with autism, right? It could be with any kids that are just not getting it yet, getting the lessons or the information. This is where we may need to make our own visual supports. So when you're thinking about that, think about what they're using right now as far as visual supports go, because you want to use the same format that they're used to. So if they're used to using schedules, create a visual support in the form of a schedule, which could be a procedural checklist, okay? Because with kids with autism, it's not only, and this is for a lot of kids, it's not just with autism, but kids in general, but some kids may be a little bit quicker at that because they have more experience. Learning how to be successful with a certain format, like how do you read the information? How do you check it off? Like which one is done? Which one do I still need to do? Where do I look first? All that they have to learn before they can even focus on the information itself. So sticking with the same format helps expedite the learning, because once they see the format, they're like, okay, I know how this works. So if you're using a schedule that's from top to bottom, then they know that they start at the top, right? And especially you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, like we saw with those, then they know that that's how they complete it, step by step by step by step. So just look to see what visual support formats, that's the word I should have put on here, formats your students are already using successfully, and then just adapt that to in placing the information that they're not understanding on. Okay. If you don't have that, if you don't have previous use of visual supports, ask a parent or guardian or the school, if you're a clinic, what type of visual support the visual supports the individual is currently using. And then if that's still not working, you try this and you're like, this is when you have, remember how in that example, I said that, sometimes they only see the rabbits in the boat because they learned how to boat, or they go boating with their family every time they go to the lake or whatever, the boating scenario is. And that's why they relate to it the most. You may need to place either their favorite character or their topic, or integrate it. Either place a picture of it on the visual support or integrate it into the visual support, whatever is easier for this, with your supports. And that will help make it more meaningful. Okay. And there's a lot of examples for that. So again, visual supports are so widely used. I will, Google it, look on your favorite websites for teaching or clinical work, and you probably will see examples, but definitely keep in mind those individual characteristics of the person that you're working with. All right, some evidence-based instructional strategies when it comes to visual supports in teaching explicitly. Okay. And these could be used as cue cards, right? As cue cards, as cue strategies. And one of them is Comic Strip Conversations by Carol Gray. And I put a link at the very end of the PDF to that website. And look, you can draw stick figures. It's great. The difference is that each of, right, the bubbles are thought bubbles, conversation bubbles. She even has colors that represent different things. So this is a way to teach explicitly about relationship types of information, which we know can be a little bit challenging for our individuals with autism. So this is a great way to do on the spot, some teaching. Or if you wanted to do it for the group, you could do that and have them co-create. That's a great, that's always, it works better when there's co-creation with the student and yourself, or your client and yourself, or your child and yourself, when they can co-create. But if they're not there yet, then this may help too. If you need to integrate their favorite characters, or put it in their favorite, integrate their favorite topics into there, that may be the case. But this is a great way and an effective, proven way to teach students with autism. Thinking of you, thinking of me. This is great for usually like upper elementary, middle school, high school types of students. When it comes to, again, as you can see, like really understanding how yourself works. It's really about multiple perspectives, social skills within different contexts, what you say, what you don't say, talk about, how you feeling. So all those type of skills. Her website, Michelle Garcia Winner, her website is social thinking. And she has free webinars on some of this stuff. So I would highly recommend it. She has some really great ideas. If you want to get her stuff, great, but I don't think you need to all the time. I think you probably can find your own stuff that will be applicable. But yeah, but if you work with this population, you're covering these strategies or these skills all the time, then you may want to look into getting something to help you for time purposes. Evidence-based instructional strategies. Another one is social stories. We use a lot of those during teaching the pandemic, right? For understanding why we can no longer, can't do hugs, or why we can't put put the toys in the mouth, which, is never a good idea anyway. But talking about germs, we really got to focus on germs. The biggest thing about social stories is the fact that it teaches perspective, has perspective sentences. Okay, so there is an algorithm or yeah, an algorithm is probably the best way, or an equation about how to write the stories. Like include so many sentences and these type of sentences in it. So I did put this also in the resource folder so you could take a look at it. So you can write some social stories. That a lot of times that will work, and it doesn't need to be, it could be for any age. It could be all words, it could be words and pictures, it could be photographs. So again, this is another strategy that has been used for a while. So you can Google it, and you'll see a lot of information on it and examples. Some other strategies as the 5-point scale. This is one of my favorite because you can use it right away, and teaching the scale 1 to 5 and how to rate yourself, or rate how you like something or don't like something, or your pain, or all, is a very useful skill to learn to generalize. But again, you can see you can integrate their favorites. 1 is calm. If you're using it with anxiety, as you can see, 1 is calm, 5 is when it's the meltdown or the shutdown. And then in this format, you have looks like, feels like how the body feels or looks like. So there's that self-awareness. And then there's that skill building. So definitely, again, another strategy that has been used a lot. So I would just Google it. But I also have the resource at the end as well. And this was created for students, to work with students with autism. What if you don't have a program to individualize for, though? No, this was the part I thought we were getting into earlier, so sorry. For self-awareness, you can use, like we just talked about, the 5-point scale. There's also a website that I put, a link that I put at the bottom, of a mom who put together a lot of different resources that she found to help teach her child. And you can, it's called Pathway to Success. And it's a website, and you can look that up. But these are a lot of great ideas, gratitude slips, right? Power of yet. So it just depends on the information that that the child's not understanding, or the child needs to communicate and isn't able to communicate. Because we know that even if a child is speaking and verbal and has functional language, sometimes finding the right words, initiating to ask for help, is very challenging for a lot of autistic individuals. So providing an alternative form of communication may help them, especially with this topic that is so new and challenging to them to learn, right? Initially. So feelings check-in, here's some of those, pictures that we saw earlier, with really creating a safe space for self-management, with some cue cards on there to really help. There's another 5-point scale. Sorry, guys, I really love it. Social awareness. You heard me explain the Michelle Garcia winner. And again, she's all about social awareness and self-awareness and multiple perspectives. So that's always a good place to go. But like I told you, on that website, there's a lot of pathways to success. There were a lot of examples too of being able. So here I show kindness, and this is kind of either a choice board, or you could use it as a bingo card. I know that some if you have multiple kids in the same room, or individuals, you can use it as a bingo card. So great fun way to teach these skills explicitly, right? Because you're identifying which skills or which activities fall under different ones. Relationships, getting comic strip conversations. There's also some other strategies for pathways to success that can really break it down. Also, Michelle Garcia winner also focuses on that one. So, and with that, decision making, I'm a big fan of contingency visual supports. Like, okay, this is what happens if you do. It's only if for the situations where you have good decisions and bad decisions, right? A good decision is going to take you to what you want, and a bad decision is going to take you to a place you don't want to. So breaking that down a lot of times will help kids. And if you can co-create that with them, that's even better, because sometimes they actually know that they know the answer, and they know the answer, but it gets so lost in all the other things they're thinking about. They don't realize it till it happens. So really having that, you could create a cue card so that they can review it and remind themselves, okay, look, this is what happens in this context, right? Or this, and if I'm in, and a good decision looks like this and a bad decision looks like this. And you may even have to break it down to what good decisions are, like in a certain situation, and what bad decisions are, and, like identify them. And then, I think some of you have probably seen these, or their cards where you're talking about certain situations and just talking it out. Again, all explicit teaching. Okay, so let's, we're towards the end here. We're just going to talk about the implementation of visual supports. I've kind of been sprinkling that through through the presentation. There's also a resource in the folder that kind of breaks it down for you. But let's just talk about it. We're just going to review the information really quick. Remember, you're going to choose the information that needs to be bridged. So that can be communicative. It could be a misunderstanding, something that you're repeatedly telling the child that they're not getting it correct, don't seem to remember, they're not able to tell you. Those are all pieces of information you're going to make into a visual support. Okay. You're going to figure out what type. Is it a boundary, a cue, a schedule? You decide whether it's going to be, something that they need to have on them, right? Something that could be in their binder, it could be in their purse or pocket. I've even seen some kids have like a bracelet with some cues, right, for them. Is it on a lanyard? So or is it a stationary? Is it just in a room, like on a certain part that, like you saw with those comfy corners? What visual is it going to have? Objects, photos. Objects would be for very young kids who, don't even look at picture books yet, or individuals who, don't look at photos. Photos doesn't really have a lot a lot of meaning to them, or symbols. So objects might be where you start. But then you may have photos, a mix of photos and symbols. I think at this point, like, again, such a visual world, especially for our kids with with TV and watching things on the iPad, iPhone, whatever digital device. I think that a lot of times photos and symbols are able to grasp that a lot easier than they were before. And words, right? You don't need to always have pictures. And if you're not sure, you're just starting to work with an individual, then give them a magazine or a book, a picture book, and see where their eyes go. What are they looking at when they're looking at this book or magazine? And of course, it has to be a book or magazine of a topic that they're going to want to look at. And then how will the student interact with it? Will they co-create it? Will they just look at it and point to it or cross things off? So that's what you're gonna, and then you're going to need to use the visual support. Okay, remember, visual supports are interactive for both the teacher and the person using it. Okay, so you will need to use it to normalize it, and by using it, you are modeling and reinforcing. So you're teaching it explicitly, but then you're teaching it also through modeling it, and then also reinforcing with something that's really meaningful to them, whether that's what you're going to have to figure out, whether it's just praise, a high five, that kind of stuff, or are they earning something every time they use it? Are they, so that's the part you got to figure out, but it has to be associated with this visual support, because that's the only way they're going to learn it effectively and efficiently. So there you go. There's our evidence-based practices: visual supports, modeling, prompting, and reinforcing. Okay, if you can integrate these four with the SEL tools that represent the information that they need to learn, then you will effectively be able to teach your students with autism or autistic individuals the information they need to be successful and reach those goals. Just some other, they need to be accessible, right? They can't be at the very top of a room. They need to be at eye level. This is just some more visual support tips. They may not be faded. Okay, some visual supports may need to be faded out, like the cue cards and some other stuff. You could fade them out, but some, like schedules, like our schedules that we use every day, are not faded out because we use them every day, right? They're constant, they're alive, they're live ones they teach. And then if they don't need the visual support anymore, because if they seem to be successful at it, they're not using the visual support anymore, remove it from the room or the section that, if it's a small section that applies to visual support, remove it, because if visual supports are not used, it becomes visual noise. And that they don't need, because they already have enough, distractions in the environment that they're trying to field out just so they can help focus. So try to lessen the visual noise by taking out anything that's not going to help them. All right, so you have the resources at the end. You can see all of them actually are live. I don't know why some are purple and some are not, but you can see there's that. The Affirm internet modules does have more information about those evidence-based practices. Iris Sentinel modules, and these two also, specific to behavior and visual supports. Social thinking, there's that one I mentioned. Pathways to Success, there is that one I mentioned. Here's the incredible 5-point scale, social stories, and comic strip conversations. So, those are all the ones we talked about. And then as this concludes our presentation, I just want to let you know, if for the resources that I used, that follows this slide. So this is part of your PDF. So just let you know, in case you wanted to see where I pulled all of my information from today. Thank you for attending. If you would please fill out this survey for us. I know this is a recorded session, but this will help us know if this presentation was helpful for you in this format, if you were able to use the information, if you learn more about autism, what you would like to learn more about. And I think that's pretty much the questions it asks you, and maybe if you want more information or something like that. So please reach out, fill out this survey for us. Use the QR code using your phone or tablet. You could type in the bit.ly, pretty easy. And then if you would like any more information about autism, I didn't talk to you too much about what Kentucky Autism Training Center is all about, but we do cover the whole state of Kentucky. And if you are not in Kentucky, feel free to reach out to us anyway, because we have collaborative relationships with other agencies like ourselves throughout the United States. We'll be more than happy to connect you with them. But feel free to reach out to us, join our Facebook page, and it looks like we need to change it to an X. Or send us an email if you have specific questions, and we'll be more than happy to help you out however we can. All right, thank you so much for everything that you do for your children, students, clients, and everybody who takes care of them, and everybody who's part of the autism community. And we hope to see you again on another web training.